All right, Connor, we're going to talk about how dark social is changing B2B growth. I've got Connor DeLaney. He's lead sales consultant at Impact. Welcome 3 times. In fact, you're the only third-time member yet. Congratulations. I don't know what that means. Maybe you're just a sucker for being on the show, but welcome again, Connor.
Thank you, Cory. I'm excited to be here. I didn't realize I'm in special waters now. It's one of a kind. So we'll make the third one the best of the best so far.
Woo! I love that, man. You set that bar super high. Right on. I reached out to you. I've had some really great conversations about this particular topic. Still a lot of misconceptions about attribution. And from the conversations I've heard Chris Walker and others talking about B2B, we're no longer in this linear path of where your sales and your opportunities are coming from. And we're going to dive in deep and hopefully get some people to think about attribution a little bit differently in this absolutely obsessed culture of tech. And once we're connected with tech, it sounds like we can try to track the entire journey. And I think we're going to disprove that myth. So I'm going to jump right in right now and ask you, why do so many companies struggle with where their best lead activity is coming from anyways?
Companies struggle with where leads come from because it's harder than ever to know where they're actually coming from. 10, 15 years ago, it was the Wild West of data and cookies and tracking. It was easier than ever to know this person came from here and they did these things and then they converted. And with the emergence of so many different pieces, social is one, and you mentioned dark social in that sense, but really it's this zero touch experience, or the phrase that we like to use is, you don't really know what you don't know until this zero moment of truth with buyers and with consumers. And the zero moment of truth is when they tell you they're ready to talk to you. And now more than ever, we control less and less of that experience with customers, meaning they go out and do research, they ask around, they message people, they might text, they may look for referrals. They do all these different actions without the business really having the ability to know. Even things like Google search, they now have a zero-click experience where you get your answers. It's like the AI snippets, which used to be the featured snippets. Now these AI snippets are even more powerful than ever before. And we get no attribution to that. We have no idea that even if we're popping up in that, because Google is formatting it and every other search engine's formatting it in a way that's giving you information where you don't have to go to the website. So all of this research is now, and it's same thing with like ChatGPT or other, AI engines. They're able to get a lot of information from the web without having to interact with you, your website, or to interact with your sales team either. So much more of the buying experience and the research experience is happening behind closed doors until the customer says, I'm ready to talk with you, which makes attribution even more tricky because sometimes it looks like this was their first touch point. They just showed up on our site, they clicked through our booking page and they booked a call, but they've likely been doing days, weeks, if not months of research to get to that point of saying, I'm ready to talk with someone. And that's making attribution harder than ever.
Big time. Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Absolutely. And I'm going to add a little bit more to that. And that I also think that, in fact, before we jumped on this call, is that some of the tracking, not even the things that are tracked aren't even correct, right? I think I told you because of the CRM we're using, see lead activity, and we've got a particular tracking tool in our CRM that tells us how long they've been on the page, the time, but also the source. And it'll say this lead came in via Google Ads. Well, we don't run any Google Ads. So not only is it not right, not correct, but it didn't, like you just said, there's so much more to this fruit salad. In fact, I'm finding more of my opportunities are coming from DMs directly in LinkedIn. Sure. And as you said, I can't believe it, I'm not using Google that much. In fact, I haven't fired up and used Google to do a search in so long. I used this exercise earlier before. I did a prompt to find our next CRM. And I said, these are the requirements that I need. And it literally, and I think I gave it 6 must-haves. Like these things need to be in. It returned only 3 solutions that met that criteria. I didn't have to go to all these different websites. I did so much of the sales process myself. It was all DIY. And I don't think I even went to the website after I found out, because I recognized those solutions and I was thinking about them anyway. So it was a validation. I reached out, booked a demo, got a little bit more, none of that being tracked. I could see how this would be becoming so difficult and convoluted to get our arms around.
And Cory, I think there's an important caveat within that of why buyers are doing that. Buyers have less and less trust with many brands out in the market. And so they want to avoid the pushy salesperson, the spam me with emails until I buy from you. There's a major trust deficit when it comes to customers interacting with brands. And so to your point, they either want to interact with individuals, which is reaching out to you instead of, call it lure, or reaching out to Connor instead of impact. They want to interact with the human there, not just the website. Or they want to do their research before they have to interact with someone at all. And that's where brands typically fall short, is they want to guard that information. They want to hide it from them. They want to make it more difficult to find, which again, you understand why. You want to get them in your database. You want to be able to work them. But at the same time, buyers don't want that. So how do we adjust with buyers? How do we give them more control of that buying experience so that when they hit the 80% of the way through the buying journey before they interact with you, that's the number we always lean into. And it's proven, whether it's Gartner studies or others, buyers want to get as far through the buying process before they interact with you. And I think hospitality, they want to get as far in their research before they book a on-site visit or they want to meet with your events team. They want to get as far as they can. So we need to help them get there, because if you're building trust through that way that they want to buy, which is the way buyers want to buy right now, is they want to do it themselves, the more you can help guide them along, the more likely they are going to buy from you, rather than if you create friction. Friction is the F word of the internet. As soon as you create friction, guess what they're going to do? They're going to leave. They're going to go find someone else. It's the same thing. If you tried to go buy a CRM like you researched and they make it difficult to buy or they really try to hold information from you, you're just going to go with the second person on the list instead of the first one because you don't want to deal with that. That's the experience a lot of businesses are creating for their buyers. And that's making it harder and harder to win business because we're not building trust when they're not showing their hand yet. You want to show them the light and show them the way to buy.
Why is there still a hesitation or a misunderstanding on literally nothing can be hidden anymore? I can do a prompt and I can find out a ballpark of what any product or service is, right? It may or may not be right, but it's going to give me something to go on. Why don't more leaders or those that are making these decisions still play this defense and still their cards close to their chest, and they're not realizing there are no secrets anymore?
Yeah, there isn't any one answer. If we talk about something like pricing, there's 3 common hesitations I hear when it comes to pricing. Pricing's complicated, the it depends answer, which, yeah, you don't have to give them the exact number, but like you said, you might be able to provide a ballpark and how you landed at that ballpark.
Sure.
Number 2, competitors. We don't want our competitors to know how much we cost. Believe it or not, we could figure it out either way, and everyone's within reason because, Cory, I bet that I could give a ballpark of what your services cost, and you could give a ballpark of what my services cost, and we'd have an idea.
Ours are on the website, thanks to Marcus. So
we're both pretty transparent, but in the sense of you could look at Joe Schmo down the street, and you probably have a general sense of what they cost. Our competitors don't just pay the bills for us; we pay our bills. And the third one that's most important is most companies tend to be more expensive. The least expensive option is not always the one that gets bought, and most of us don't want to be the bottom of the barrel, because you're usually sacrificing experience or quality to win on price. And that's not it's not a business I'd imagine most of your listeners are in. So I think when we talk about the factors, on top of that, people hide from the reality, honestly. It's something like the funny analogy I always use is the ostrich. Ostrich marketing. Ostrich puts their head in the ground when something scary comes. Whether it's real or not, I don't actually know, but it's the story you hear, right?
Totally.
And when the ostrich hides, that's how most businesses act, is we can just avoid it and they'll eventually book with us. Believe it or not, they're not going to if they don't have to. And if everyone's doing it, yes, it sets a certain standard, but the first person to disrupt that flow and become that disruptor is the one that's going to win more business. And you're going to suddenly see, wow, they're getting a lot of these events. Why is that? Because they're giving the buyer what they want. So it's hard to say why, but I shared some examples of what I've heard and the reasons that you have to get around that or go beyond it. And most businesses, Cory, don't think like their buyers. Most businesses think like their competitors or think like their businesses, in the sense that when you go to make a significant buying decision, Cory, you do your research, you look for all the answers, and you book when you're ready. Most businesses don't treat it that way, but the ones that we learn from like it. When we look at our business, we usually hide the information that we would want as buyers, and it's very difficult to break that cycle or break that mold of hold our cards tight until they book a call, and then we'll give them everything. If you give them everything, they're going to book a call. It's this endless cycle. But that's the end of my spiel. That's the end of my rant.
Yeah, no, it's funny you said that, because you had mentioned the industry notoriously, and we're talking hotels, and this has become more of a reality because a lot of them, the entire sales process in the department is so chaotic. They're responding to emails and our inboxes are full. And because it's that is the reason they're not putting the information out front and center. And I don't think they realize if they were being proactive and they were putting the FAQs on there and they were putting in the pricing, just like you'd shared that website with me before, which is a shining example, by the way, of how, and the numbers back it up. But you would alleviate some of the busyness and the reactionary and then I even heard that part of the reason why a lot of the sellers aren't able to get back with the people in time is because their inbox is so full. If you had all the basic information on the website, you wouldn't have all these questions to be answered because they're already be up front and center. So I know we're getting a little bit off the market on attribution, but
yeah, actually, there's a place to tie it back there.
Right.
As we are answering, if we're putting information out there, again, while we may not be able to track it, we want to control the conversation. We want to run the conversation. And so if customers are going to social, they're going to AI tools and a chat GPT and all those, if we're not supplying that information to the world, we're not showing up in those results.
Yeah.
We're not showing up as giving the answers or giving the information. And that's where brands are getting traction right now. That's where we call it signals. We're sending signals constantly to AI, to these social tools, to talk about us, to share information that we're sharing, to put us out in the world. And when we talk about signals and attribution, it typically takes somewhere between, and this is a broad range, between 7 and 20 signals, little touch points of, I saw you in my Instagram Reels feed. Someone sent me this in a DM and I wanted to go watch it or read it. I looked up on ChatGPT what the top brands are and you popped up. It takes a number of signals in order for you to say, okay, maybe I should be considering them. And that's very different than how it used to be when you mentioned the traditional marketing of they do the research, they find a brand, they do all the things, and then they convert. It's not as linear anymore. And those signals are happening across all these platforms, which isn't to say you have to be everywhere, but you need to be where your buyers are more than ever. And you have to be in multiple places where they're gathering information, they're learning, they're interacting with your brand. The more touch points they have, the faster and more likely they are to get in touch. And the higher likelihood you have of attribution, because eventually, whether you put the how did you hear from us question out there, or if you can actually track certain touch points, you're going to have more of that story that says they watched this video and they left a comment, and then they read this article and then they converted. You can see how it's not linear, but it's all leading to the same conversion point, which again, it makes attribution tricky because it's so complicated, but you have to put yourself out there in order to attribute it back to you.
Wonderful. Now, this is a great segue into my next question is, because of this non-linear path and so many other signals going on, most of it being dark, it's not trackable, right? So what are some simple ways that you could suggest companies can get their arms around exactly what's going on?
When you say get your arms around it, there's a little bit of a accept reality, because right now it's harder than ever to track. But I think the key touch points is have the right tools in place, make sure that you can actually track it and that you're setting up your different platforms in a way. And that might mean you have to invest more into a certain platform to track things more effectively, because attribution and tracking tells you whether things are working or not working. And that's always important. Data-driven decisions are always important. The other piece is, and this is not to say off the beaten path, but it sounds a little old school, but from what I've found, the more that you can lean into the the personal side of things. Whether it's asking customers, hey, how did you hear about us? What was the journey to discover our brand? The better you're going to be there. But also, how can you, when you're getting a DM or when you're going through other pieces, how can you go back and try to map that out and see where it goes? I don't have a secret sauce for like how people should be doing it because it's changing, it's evolving. So I don't have a perfect answer for you, Cory, but I always think that you can go old school and gain qualitative data on what their journey and their experience was. You can put the right tools and tech stack in place, and then you can constantly be experimenting and iterating. And if you find that certain avenues are working better, again, you can't sit still. It's not a set it and forget it attribution strategy anymore. It's not the one size fits all. It is more complex and it's more demanding than ever before too. So I find that the teams that just say, I'm going to just pump Google ads and it's just going to keep working, those are the ones that are struggling. The ones that are experimenting, doing a lot of different things, not just saying, here goes my budget, there it goes, but trying all these different pieces are the ones that are saying, I'm seeing what's working now and maybe for the next 3 to 6 months, and we're going to revisit. It's forcing marketing strategies not to be annual, but perhaps more quarterly, or frankly, even monthly sometimes. But I aim for something a little bit longer than that. It's harder to get by the board. So I would say that's always the biggest one, is you have to be more fluid and mobile than you've been before.
Yeah, in fact, I mentioned to you earlier, I think the only way that you can get at least a total snapshot of where your opportunities are coming from is to get it. And I know it's not easy to have the conversation, especially if this person just reached out, he just jumped on the call, but getting the habit of, while you're doing some discovery and a little bit of fact finding, is mention, hey, how'd you find out about it? Because as I mentioned before, most of our opportunities now are coming through DMs on LinkedIn. The best tracking software in the world, I don't care what it is, even a form on the website that has a selection of, hey, how'd you hear about us? Yep. They're not coming in through the website. It's coming through DMs and some other areas. Only way to really get an accurate, or at least somewhat of a discussion going, is to make that part of the conversation when you first meet them. And I know it's not easy, right?
And it's not perfect either, right? Like the thing that's always funny. So I ask this question a lot when I'm on calls, and whether they'll fill out the form, but it's usually not the first touch point. It's usually the thing they remember.
Right.
And so signals is what makes it increasingly difficult. Is they might have seen a post that I put on LinkedIn, and then they may have seen a comment that I put on another person's post. And then they may have gone to the HubSpot directory, and then they filled out a form, and then they interacted with me. Because they had all these touch points, they're usually on the forum going to share the one that they found, but then they might tell the story in that process. And this is not like getting into sales coaching or anything, but most of the sales. So what brings us together today? And it's usually, and what it allows for is they're going to tell a whole story of how they got here. I just had a call earlier today. It was like 5 or 6 minutes of, here's where we were, and here's all the different things. And I was researching this, and it brought me to impact. And I gained so much valuable information out of that. But again, from an attribution standpoint, the only thing I saw is they filled out a form on our website kind of thing, and that's it. And that does make it difficult, because we want all the data and information, especially in the services and the industry that you live in, Cory. Hotels and hospitality, we want as much information on as many people as possible, but we're only going to get it when they're close. We don't know all the things that they've done before. So how can we make sure we control that conversation full time?
Beautiful. If there was one suggestion, somebody's struggling out there, they're confused on where their opportunities come from, and this could be with the hotels or even companies that are selling to hotels, which is more of a traditional SaaS for the most part on the tech side, and is used to following maybe the tracking in HubSpot, and then realizing, hey, maybe this isn't exactly correct. What would just be a simple recommendation or a tip that you can maybe help them understand maybe something a little bit different?
Don't get rid of all the tech stuff that you have. Like that, the goal of today is to not say attribution reporting is dead, because it's not. It's changing, but it's not dead. And I promise you that. I think the biggest tip that I would give, it's a great question. The biggest tip when someone is stuck in how they've always done it, I would say step back and think about the way that you make call it a more significant buying decision. I don't want you to think about the spontaneous, I bought my dog a dog toy because I got a great Instagram ad on it. Not that kind of decision. The decision that's, I have to think about it. Maybe it qualifies for the, I'm going to sleep on it buying decision. Call it like $500 or more. That's an easy threshold that I use. Is anything above $500 I need to think about before I'm going to buy anything.
Sure.
Step back and think through, if I was going to buy from a business, what do I want to know? What are the questions that I'm going to ask? What's the information that I need to understand? Step back and say, what would I want from any company that I'm going to buy from? And use one that relates to you. Again, I bought my car recently. I did a ton of research on what owning a car was going to look like because I went from leasing to buying. I did a ton of research. I wanted to understand how much it was going to cost, what the ongoing or hidden expenses might look like, what fees look like, what could go wrong with all of it, what 2 different car models look like. I asked a ton of questions. And then when I made the decision, I reached out to the Subaru dealership that I bought from. And I said, here's what I want. Here's what I already know. Does it land within this range? This is what I can do, blah, blah, blah. Bought the car in 2 days, something like that. But I got really far down the line. Think about that buying experience and what you would look for and go through, and write down the questions that you would have. And this is getting a little less simple as we go, Cory, but I think this is important.
Yeah, no.
What are the questions or decisions you would make along the way to make a significant buying decision? And then I want you to go back and ask the same questions when you go to buy it yourself from your own business. Go through do I answer a question about how much might it cost? Do I answer a question about hidden fees or additional expenses? Do I ask a question about, or maybe give an answer of, what does our option look like versus another option? Do we have reviews that someone could go look up about our event space or our hotel or our chain or space, whatever it may be? What will likely happen is you will discover you're not providing enough to make yourself want to buy from. Because if it just says, you go to your pricing page and it says request a quote. This is an easy one that I work with a lot of teams on. When your pricing page says request a quote, what do you say? Are you hiding pricing from me? Just give me an idea of what it's going to cost. I don't need the exact number, but I want to make sure I'm qualified within range. When you do that experiment and you go through it, you're likely going to identify, oh, this is why we're probably not getting found by as many people as we want, because they're not learning from us, they're not hearing from us, or we're not providing the information that they're getting. Because think about you do the AI search like you did. You look up, hey, how much does this thing cost? It's going to cost between $15,000 and $50,000. That's a big range, but it'll likely give you some reasons why it may cost more or less, depending on amount of people, depending on if you want food catered for your event, whatever it might be. And if you go on a website, that's now your expectation that's been set. And even if you're at the $49,999 number, you're still within the range that they expected. But if you hide pricing from them, and again, pricing is just the easiest one because it's usually the most conflicting one, I don't want to put my numbers out there. That's when you realize, oh, I'm not even giving myself a chance. And that's when you're likely losing the deal, strictly because customers are going to trust if you give a number, even if it's out of range, they're going to say, okay, that's higher than I expected, but that's okay. Rather than you're losing trust by not giving them anything because they fear the unknown more than they fear the high number. That's an easy example, but Cory, that would be the big thing that I would do. That would be the one thing, would be go through, write down the questions, the experience you would want versus the experience you're providing today.
I am going to echo that sentiment exactly, because I think self-awareness, putting yourself in our prospect shoes, is such an undervalued exercise. And you hit it right on the head. I think if we put ourselves through the exact same process where we are our prospects, I think some lights would go off.
It's a scary experiment too. Like the times that I facilitate it with a customer or client of Impact's, it is really uncomfortable to say, wow, we're missing this. Oh, we don't have that. And it's not to say, man, you stink, but it's one of those things like, what an opportunity. Because guess what? 95% of people aren't going to do that experiment. So if you do it and even start implementing some of those things, you're ahead of a large majority of your competitors. And that gives you such an edge, especially in your industry of hotels and hospitality space. There's so many people who avoid it. And if you're just one that gives an idea of the questions that a buyer is asking, you are decades ahead and will likely be able to stay ahead if you keep that mindset alive.
Man, I love it. I could not agree with you more. And I think a lot of sellers don't realize now, because you have that quote you just said, 80% of what is sales is now marketing. I don't think they really understand the impact of what their website and that whole process has on their sales process.
Yeah, you can't attribute a great salesperson isn't 100% of the attribution of they walked in, I sold the world to them, and they signed today. It's not the buying experience we create anymore. And so, yeah, to your point of marketing controls a lot of the sales experience. Even beyond that, like the attribution, really the last touch point should be that they're signing the piece of paper or whatever it may be. But think about the journey they go on before then. Yeah, marketing controls a lot of the dark side of social, the dark side of zero click. And dark side sounds negative, but it's more of the unknown, the pieces we don't know. Marketing's responsible for, and sales plays a part in, but marketing is going to control that buying experience because they need to be interacting with you. They send out the signals. The sales team is the one that should be having the don't screw it up moment, because if they're educated and they understand what to expect, the salesperson is just going to reiterate and validate information to bring it all.
Man, good stuff as always. Connor, before we break, can you tell us what you've been up to recently and where can we find you?
Yeah, so you can find me. LinkedIn is a great spot. Just Connor DeLaney. You're going to see a smiling bearded face just like this one. And then email is easy. If you say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about what you spoke about with Cory, cdelaney@impactplus.com. You can always contact me there. And Cory, I'm sure you'll put it in some kind of show notes or anything there if you need it. In terms of what I've been working on, so I don't know if I can go personal side, but at the time of recording, I'm running the New York City Half Marathon the coming weekend. So got some exciting goals there and been training up for it. I'm excited for it. I'm very amped up for it. I'm just itching to go. Professionally, ramping up speaking. I've got a number of speaking gigs over the next, call it 2 or 3 months, and excited to be on both virtual and in-person stages between March and May. I think there's 6 events that I'll be at. Anything from home improvement to Impact's own event to Vistage Neo groups all over the map. So really excited to be making that a reality. It's been a goal for a long time, and now we find ourselves, it's really happening, which is great.
Wow, man. It's an action-packed calendar you got.
Life's busy, man. I tell you, Cory, there is no days off, but it's what I love, it's what I enjoy, and it's what I aspire to be too.
Awesome. And I got big FOMO because my partner Susan is going to be hanging out with you guys in Chicago. Yeah. I got to make that up somehow, but man.
Yeah, Impact Live is going to be a big one. That's one of the events I'll be speaking at, but I'm really looking forward to a lot of what we talked about today, but diving even deeper on some of the future of what this holds too. It's a great event, and Cory, I know we'll see you at the next one too.
Until then, we're going to have some great conversations, and thanks again for your third appearance here. Great as I knew it would be. And have a great rest of the week, man.
You too, Cory. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks.